wedged in metal. A sound so thin it could have been the wind, except it wasn't. And then a pair of eyes, not afraid, begging. In the forgotten alley of this dying industrial town, despair had found a rusted frame to rest its weight on. But sometimes from the darkest corners of suffering, a story of redemption begins. And this one broke my heart wide open, only to stitch it back together with a kind of faith I thought I'd lost long ago. That evening, the last light slid across the oil-stained roofs of the old factories. The city felt like a machine, breathing its previous hot metallic choking on dust and memory. I was driving my old Ford along East Cleveland, where sirens once marked the end of every shift. Now only the wind moved between the hollow smokestacks. For 8 years since Elaine passed, I'd lived alone. My evenings were all the same coffee, a worn chair by the window, and the quiet glow of streetlights against my walls. That silence. It was my friend, my punishment, my teacher. I thought I had learned to live with it. But that day the silence cracked, split open by a sound so faint I almost missed it. A whimper, thin, trembling, but it didn't stop. I eased off the gas and listened. It wasn't far. It was coming from the alley between 2 storage buildings, dark, narrow, heavy with heat. I killed the engine. The air hit me like a furnace. And that's when I saw it. Amid the trash, crushed cans, and broken bricks lay a Doberman mother, her head trapped beneath a rusted metal frame. Her neck swollen, her muzzle crusted with dry blood. She was so thin I could count her ribs, each one lifting and falling like tired waves. Her breath came shallow, rasping through her throat, as if each inhale cost her something precious. Beside her, a puppy, barely alive, black and tan skin stretched over bone. He pressed himself against her, licking her face, whimpering softly and broken. It wasn't a cry for milk. It was a plea for an answer, for a breath, for proof that she was still there. But there was no answer. Only the whisper of wind through steel. Only the smell of rust, blood, and fear. I froze. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then her eyes opened, dark brown, clouded with pain, but in them burned something I wasn't ready for. Not the light of life. The light of a plea. She didn't bark, didn't growl. She just looked straight at me. I heard the pup again, a small whine cut short by exhaustion. My chest ached. The world around us went still. No cars, no wind. Just one fragile rhythm of breath fighting to stay. I stepped closer. The air stung with iron. I knelt, reached through the metal, and touched her fur. It was hot, fever hot. My palm burned from the heat. She exhaled against my wrist, each breath jagged, desperate, as if she knew time was already leaving her. The puppy licked my hand, tiny, shaking, trusting, and something inside me broke. Maybe because I'd seen that look before years ago in Elaine's eyes. The same fading light, the same silent worry for someone who'd be left behind. I swallowed hard. "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm here now." The mother closed her eyes. I didn't know if it was pain or faith, but I chose to believe it was faith. I took off my jacket and draped it over her so she wouldn't shiver, or maybe so the city wouldn't have to see what it had done. Then I sat down beside her, back against the stained brick, listening to the faint breaths slip between gusts of wind and the creak of old metal. The sunset bled across the concrete in streaks of red. A drop of blood rolled from her mouth and fell soundlessly to the ground. I looked at her then, at the trembling pup curled against her belly, and in that moment I knew, tonight I wasn't just a passerby anymore. I knelt beside the metal frame, searching for a gap wide enough to slip my hand through. The bars were rusted, caked with mud and dried blood. I reached in fingertips, brushing the mother's neck. Her skin was stretched tight, burning hot, her pulse a faint thread about to snap. I tried lifting just a little, but she whimpered a sharp, broken sound that felt like it came from inside my own chest. I pulled back, breathing hard. Cold sweat slid down my spine. "It's okay, girl," I whispered. "Don't be scared. I'll find a way." But even as I said it, I could hear the doubt in my own voice, like a man trying to convince himself the world hadn't already given up. I looked around. No one. The alley was empty, still as a photograph. Far off, a few windows glowed amber light leaking through curtains like half-closed, indifferent eyes. Then I saw a man pushing a garbage cart across the street. I waved. "Hey, please, this dog's stuck. She's dying." He slowed, frowned. "Stray dog. Leave it alone, old man. You'll get yourself bit. But she's breathing. She's still alive." My voice cracked like breaking glass. He shook his head, kept walking. "Then what? You gonna take her to a hospital?" The wheels squealed as they rolled away, the sound scraping down the alley. I stood there staring after him, heartbeat pounding in my ears. Above me, an old billboard flickered in the fading light. "Safety first." Its red bulbs blinking weakly against the haze. I let out a dry laugh. Safety, what a cruel joke. The puppy whimpered again. I crouched beside him. He lifted his tiny head, pressed his nose to my hand, then turned back and licked his mother's cheek once more. Such a small gesture, yet it hit me like a blade. I swallowed hard. I know. She's hurting. I ran to the truck, popped the trunk. A screwdriver, a rope, an old blanket, that was all. I hurried back. The mother hadn't moved. Her chest rose and fell barely. I wedged the screwdriver into the metal frame and pried. The rust screamed in protest, slicing the air. She jerked, whined in pain. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry. I just want to help." A gust tore through the alley, spinning trash and paper into a storm. The smell of rot, rust, and distant rain merged into something heavy, almost suffocating. Somewhere beyond the alley, a car door slammed and hurried footsteps echoed. A woman passing by. I shouted, "Ma'am, please help me." She turned, glanced once at me, then at the dog. Her face shifted from pity to fear. "Are you insane? It's rabid. It'll kill you." Then she walked off, heels clicking sharply against the concrete until they disappeared. I watched her go, my mouth dry. In that instant I saw it clearly, how the world turns its back, not out of cruelty, but because feeling nothing has become the easier choice. The puppy was still crying, weaker now. He pushed his head against my palm, trembling. I knelt lower, pressing my hand to his back. His heartbeat fluttered fast and frantic beneath my fingers. That rhythm, small, desperate, reminded my own heart what it meant to care again. "Listen, little one," I said, softly. "I don't know how yet, but I'm not leaving you." I said it to him, to her, maybe to myself. The wind shifted. The old warehouse compressor fell silent, leaving behind a suffocating stillness. My breath rose in pale smoke. I took off my coat and draped it over the mother, trying to keep her warm. My throat tightened as I looked down at the pup, standing by her side like a shadow that refused to leave. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. A flat, emotionless voice answered. "What's your emergency?" I told her. The woman paused, then said, "We'll send animal control, sir, but it might take a while." "I don't have a while," I said. "She's dying. I'm sorry, sir. Please maintain a safe distance. Do not touch the injured animal." The line went dead. I stared at the dark screen, let out a hoarse laugh. "Maintain a safe distance," I repeated, as if that's all the world knows how to teach anymore. Stay away from pain. I put the phone away. The puppy licked my wrist again, soft, trembling like the brush of a ghost. I rested my hand on his head. "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm here." He looked up, eyes dark and wide, catching the flicker of the streetlight above us. And in that gaze, I finally understood I wasn't just saving him. He was saving me. I stood, looked around one last time. No footsteps, no cars, no one stopping. The city kept turning cold and distant as if mercy had been written out of its design. It was just me, a dying mother, and a small heartbeat that still believed in kindness. "I promise," I whispered. "Whatever it takes, I'll come back. I'll get her out." Then I wrapped the blanket around the mother's body carefully, reverently, like someone protecting a fragile truth. The puppy followed, pressed close to my leg, and in the dim light of that alley, I swear I heard it. A faint breath beneath the steel. Weak but steady. A pulse that said it wasn't too late to begin again. I was back in less than 15 minutes. The rain had started, a heavy gray washing the heat out of the day like it was rinsing the city clean of its sins. The streetlights bled yellow into the puddles, their reflections trembling over rust-streaked iron that looked like old blood. The alley was pitch dark now, swallowed by water and silence. I flicked on my flashlight. Its weak beam sliced through the downpour. The Doberman mother was still there, motionless, rain streaming down her face. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. "Hey, girl," I murmured, my voice lost in the storm. No movement. I reached out. Her neck was warm, but faintly so. Her breathing came in shallow bursts. The puppy sat beside her, soaked and shivering, eyes wide as if asking, "You really came back?" I opened the truck's rear hatch, pulled out what I could find. A tow rope, a screwdriver, an old snow shovel. None of it looked like much, but when death stares you in the face, doing something, even if it's hopeless, is the only way to stay human. I jammed the shovel into the ground and wedged it under the metal frame. The iron screamed against iron, a cold cutting sound that echoed through the rain. My hand slipped, skin tore open, blood mixed with water. I kept going, once, twice, again. The mother let out a small cry, not loud, but enough. Enough to tell me she was still here. "Easy now." "I'm here," I whispered. I wasn't sure if I said it to her or to myself. Somewhere inside my head I could almost hear Elaine, my wife, her voice, soft, steady. "Don't you quit, Ben." I pressed harder, but the frame wouldn't budge. The ground had turned slick with mud. My knees gave out and I fell hard. The flashlight rolled away, casting shaky light across the graffiti-stained wall. I lay there for a few seconds, gasping, a 65-year-old man on his knees in the rain trying to free a dying dog from steel bars. It wasn't smart, but I couldn't stop. Then I heard it. Not a whimper this time. A breath. A deeper one. I looked up. Her eyes were open, just a sliver, but real. Her chest lifted, fell. I touched her neck again, still a pulse, weak but steady. "That's it," I whispered. "That's it, girl. Stay with me." I looped the rope around the frame, hooked it to the shovel's handle, and pulled with everything I had left. The metal groaned, resisted, then crack. A small shift. A gap opened, barely the width of a finger, but enough to make me smile. A sliver of hope. The puppy moved closer, pressing his head against my hand. "See that little one? We're getting somewhere." My words drowned under the rain, but I didn't need to hear them. I just needed to believe them. The rain fell harder, washing blood from her neck, clearing the rust-colored streaks from her fur. I slipped off my jacket, covered her head, shielding her from the wind. Her warmth still lingered beneath the fabric, fragile but real. I pulled out my phone and dialed the community vet. After 3 rings, a woman's voice answered, tired but calm. "Riverview Community Vet. This is Grace. Are you the doctor?" My voice trembled. "Yes. Someone called earlier about a trapped Doberman. Is that you?" "That's me. I'm trying to help, but her neck's swelling fast. I don't know how long she's got. Keep her warm. Don't force the metal. I'm 10 minutes away." "Do you hear me?" 10 minutes, I repeated. "Yes. Keep her awake with your voice. The line clicked dead. I looked down at her. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "They're coming. Just 10 more minutes." I didn't know if she understood, but her eyes softened just slightly, as if she chose to trust me. I placed my hand on her forehead. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The puppy stayed close, trembling yet calm. The flashlight glimmered against the rusted bars, bouncing faint red from the distant streetlight. Rain, blood, and mud mingled together on the ground, turning into a single color that almost looked like life returning. I leaned back against the wall, exhaled. My whole body ached, but my heart pounded strongly. It felt like something inside me, something long locked away, had finally cracked open. The rain kept falling. The mother kept breathing. The puppy kept trembling. And I, an old man alone in a steel-gray city, saw for the first time in years a real light cutting through the dark. I don't remember how long I sat there. The rain kept coming hard, slanting, throwing itself off the pavement and onto my back. My hand was on the Doberman's neck, her pulse slipping away. The puppy trembled by her side, pressed to her belly, eyes wet and fixed on me as if I were the last thing it could hold on to. Then the headlights cut through the alley. White light ripped the rain apart and flashed off the rusted bars like old blood. A silver SUV pulled up. A woman stepped out, thin leather bag over her shoulder, a flashlight in her hand. "Are you Ben?" Her voice was low but warm. "That's me," I nearly shouted. "She's breathing, but barely." She moved fast, dropped to her knees beside the dog. "My God," she breathed, then hurried clinical. "She's trapped at the neck. If we don't free it soon, she'll suffocate." Words I didn't need to fully understand. All I heard was the single truth: if nothing happened now, she would die. "Hold her head for me," she said. My hands shook as I did what she asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out a scalpel, a syringe, and a bottle of saline. When she poured the saline over the wound, the dog flinched and let out a soft groan. The puppy skittered forward, whining, trying to wedge itself between us. "Easy, easy." "It's gonna be okay," she murmured, and the calm in her tone made me believe it. "Have you done this before?" I asked. "Every day," she answered without looking up. Only difference this time is someone didn't walk away. That line lodged in my throat. She didn't praise me. She only stated the most important fact I had stayed. Rain hammered her shoulders. Water ran down her neck, but she didn't notice. Her hands moved precisely and quickly. The scalpel peeled away clotted mud and metal that had bitten into flesh. Each cut made the dog flinch, but she didn't cry out. The woman whispered as she worked, "Almost there, girl. Just a little more." I watched without breathing. 1 minute, then 2. A blade clicked on metal, then snap. A small sound, but it cut through the rain louder than anything. The iron loosened. She slid a hand in and pulled hard. I pulled with her all the strength I had left. Metal shrieked, then the mother slid free and collapsed onto the concrete. "She's out!" I shouted. Grace, only then did I catch her name, cradled the dog's head in her lap and pressed a little rescue mask to her muzzle. "Weak, but there's a rhythm," she said, voice hoarse but her eyes bright. The puppy yelped, circled, then flung itself against its mother. I put my hand on its flank and felt warmth come back underneath my palm. Grace exhaled and adjusted the tiny oxygen setup, whispering, "Good girl. You did it." The air changed as if someone had opened a window. The smell of rust and blood thinned and was replaced by wet earth and rain. I looked at the woman sitting there holding a life back from the dark. Her flashlight painted her face tired, soaked, but kind. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked quietly. "All my life," she said, and smiled through the rain. "I used to be the one who needed saving. Now I pay that debt forward." Her answer shut me up. The rain seemed softer somehow. All that remained were the dog's shallow breaths and the frantic boom of my own heart. "Help me get her in the car," Grace said. I lifted the puppy. She lifted the mother. Two strangers. Two weary hearts, both carrying the same small, trembling life out of the alley and into light. When the door shut, I watched through the rear view. Headlights sliced through the rain, sending a beam back into the alley like someone had finally lit a candle where only shadow had lived. Grace drove with rain still dripping from her sleeves, but her hands were steady on the wheel. I sat in the passenger seat holding the puppy against my chest. He trembled non-stop, his tiny body hot with fear, but his eyes never left the back seat where his mother lay still wrapped in a gray blanket. Every time the SUV hit a pothole, I flinched, afraid that fragile rhythm of breath would break. Outside, the city blurred in the rain. Streetlights smeared across the wet asphalt, stretching our reflection into a lone streak of yellow light. In the rear-view mirror, I could see her head tilted slightly, her breathing broken and uneven. The headlights caught the wound at her neck, where the rusted steel had eaten into her skin, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out. "Will she make it?" I asked, my voice rough, unsure I even wanted the answer. Grace kept her eyes on the road, her mouth a hard line before she said quietly, "I won't promise that, Ben. But I've seen animals fight to their last breath, just because someone believed they were still worth saving." I held the puppy tighter, feeling his quick, fragile breaths against my ribs. I believe I whispered. We reached Riverview Animal Clinic just before midnight. The sign outside flickered weakly, half the bulbs dead. A tired night nurse spotted Grace and called the on-duty vet. They rushed out with a stretcher, lifted the mother from the car, hooked up IV lines, and checked her pulse. Everything moved fast, precise, mechanical cold. I stood in the hallway watching through fogged glass. Grace spoke to the lead doctor. I couldn't hear, but I saw their gestures pointing at the neck, the chest, the monitor. The machine beeped faintly, and my heart began to match its rhythm. Minutes passed. Then Grace came back. "She has a pulse," she said, breathless, "but her breathing's shallow. They're placing a tube trying to stabilize the airway." I nodded, unable to speak. The puppy pressed closer, whimpering. I stroked his back gently. "She's fighting, little one," I murmured, just like I once did. Through the glass, I saw them shave the fur around her neck, wipe away blood. Another vet injected medication, adjusted the ventilator. The steady beep-beep of the heart monitor filled the room, thin but alive, a fragile bridge holding her to this world. I don't know how long I stood there. The clock on the wall read nearly 2 a.m. The corridor stretched under harsh white light, thick with the smell of antiseptic. Grace sat beside me, hands wrapped around a paper cup of cold coffee. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, no longer the sharp gaze of a professional, but the quiet stillness of someone who's known loss too well. "You know," she said softly, "I once had a Doberman, too. She pulled me out of a car wreck. I couldn't save her back. Maybe that's why I do this." I looked at her. She didn't need to explain further. Everyone carries an old wound, and sometimes saving another life is the only way to keep your own going. Moments later, the doctor came out wiping his forehead. "She's stabilizing," he said. "Still critical, but if she makes it through the next 24 hours, her chances rise." I nodded, speechless. Grace smiled faintly, half relief, half prayer. They let me in for 5 minutes. The room was small, warm, filled with the soft hum of machines. She lay motionless, a breathing tube at her throat, her chest rising barely an inch at a time. I sat beside her, laid my hand over her paw. Cold. I bent close and whispered, "You've already done the hardest part. Now rest." The puppy padded over, stood on his hind legs, and pressed his nose gently to her cheek. He didn't cry, just stayed there. A tear slipped down from my eye onto my hand. I didn't know if it was gratitude or the fear that I couldn't bear losing anyone else, even one who couldn't speak. When I stepped out, Grace was waiting, her expression soft. "She's strong," she said. I know I answered. I've never met anyone like her. The night crawled on. The rain outside had stopped. Only the steady hum of the monitors filled the hallway, keeping time with hope. I leaned my head back against the wall and drifted off. When I woke, the sky was pale gold. Grace stood by the window, the first light catching on her damp coat, turning it almost translucent. "You're awake," she said, her voice hoarse from the long night. I rubbed my eyes, looked through the glass. The doctor inside was smiling, saying something I couldn't hear. Grace touched my shoulder gently. She moved Ben. Just a little, but she moved. "She's coming back." I stood, frozen. My heart clenched, then burst open in one hard beat. Through the window I saw her eyes, slowly, painfully open, like someone pushing the lid of the world just enough to step back into it. The puppy wagged his tail. Grace smiled. Tears ran down my face before I could stop them. I managed only 2 words. "Thank you." She shook her head. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for not walking away." I looked back at the room, at the fragile life that had been pulled back from the edge, and realized sometimes the line between death and survival is nothing more than one person choosing to stop. 3 days later, she woke up. No music, no miracle, just a breath that lasted a little longer, eyes that opened a little slower, and a faint twitch of her paw when the doctor touched it. But to me, that was a miracle. I stood beside the hospital bed. The Doberman mother, now named Raven, as Grace called her, was still thin, a white bandage wrapped around her neck. But her eyes were different. There was light in them, the kind you only see in those who've walked to the edge of the world and found their way back. Beside her, the puppy Grace had named him Scout, slept with his nose pressed against her paw, letting out small sighs like he was dreaming of a safer place. Grace said softly, "She'll recover slowly," but her spirit's already back. I can see it in the way she looks at you. I smiled. She's not just looking at me, Grace. She's looking back at the world. The story spread faster than either of us expected. A vet tech had recorded that night the rain, the screech of metal, Grace's trembling hands freeing the trapped dog. The clip went viral within hours, titled, "The Old Man Who Didn't Walk Away." I don't know who came up with it, but thousands shared it. Letters poured in. People sent food blankets, dog toys, and medication. Elementary kids drew cards showing Raven and Scout under the rain. A local news station came to interview me, asking how it felt to save a life. I told them I didn't save anyone. I just stopped when everyone else kept walking. I didn't feel like a hero. I still remembered the smell of rust, the heat of a fading breath under my hand, and that tiny whimper in the dark, the sound that had pulled me out of 8 years of silence. A week later, Grace organized a small gathering at the clinic. Old patients came, volunteers, even strangers who'd seen the video. Raven could stand now, slowly but proudly. When she took her first steps, Scout bounded around her tail, wagging wildly. Everyone laughed, the kind of laughter that comes with tears. "You know," Grace said, standing beside me by the glass door, "since that video went up, adoptions have tripled. There's even a group of students cleaning up the alley where you found her. They call it Hope Alley." I chuckled, voice rough. Sounds like a movie title. Grace smiled. "And you're the lead character." I looked at Raven, steady, graceful despite her weakness. Scout pressed close by her side, and a group of kids crouched nearby to pet them. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. It was as if the city itself had learned how to listen again, not just to the cry of an animal, but to all the quiet sounds we tune out, the sigh of the man sleeping under a bridge, The soft cry of a child in a seventh-floor apartment, the weary breath of someone trying to smile through their pain. The city was never heartless. It had only been waiting for a sound to wake it up. And that night, the small broken whimper beneath the iron bars had done exactly that. Before leaving the clinic that evening, I turned to look one last time through the window. Raven slept peacefully. Scout curled against her. The fluorescent light fell across the white bandage at her neck, glowing like a thread of hope. Grace stood beside me, hands tucked in her lab coat pockets. "You see, Ben," she said quietly, "sometimes a single choice can change the course of a whole life." I looked at Raven, then at her. "Not just one life, Grace," I said. "Maybe an entire city." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlights shimmered over a shallow puddle, the same one where I had knelt that night. A breeze swept through, carrying the warm scent of earth after the storm. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years I heard it again, the calm, steady rhythm of faith beating in my chest. 3 months later, Raven could walk on her own. The first step was shaky but steady. The legs that had once been swollen were strong again, her black and tan coat gleaming in the sunlight as if painted with the light of a new beginning. Scout Bigger now bounded across the clinic's backyard barking as if he wanted the whole world to know his mother had won. Grace looked at me and said, "They need a real home, Ben. Not just a place to live, but a place to remember they were saved." I was quiet for a while before answering. "I have a small house out by the edge of town. It's been empty for years. Maybe it's time it belonged to someone again." The day we brought Raven and Scout home, the air was cool and clear. Morning sunlight filtered through the old chestnut trees, scattering patches of gold across the porch. Raven stepped out of the car and took a deep breath, her ears rising. She stopped at the porch steps, looked around, then turned to me. I smiled. "Welcome home." I never thought I'd say those words again. After Elaine died, the house was just a place I existed in, not a place I lived. But when Raven and Scout ran through the hallways, their paws tapping across the floorboards, I realized something had returned. The house had a heartbeat again. Every morning, I made coffee while Scout tugged at my sleeve, begging to go outside. Raven would lie on the porch, eyes half closed in the sun, lifting her head whenever I called her name. At night, before turning off the lights, I'd listen to their slow, steady breathing, the simplest sound in the world, and somehow the most profound. One afternoon, Grace stopped by. She brought a hand-carved wooden sign and set it by the porch. "A place where lives are seen." She smiled. "I thought it fit you." I looked at the sign, then at Raven, lying nearby, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the setting sun turned the old factory roofs red. "It's not me, Grace," I said softly. "They're the ones who taught me to see again." We sat on the steps for a long time, saying nothing. The late breeze carried the scent of dry grass and earth, the smell of autumn coming. Scout played at our feet, then suddenly padded over and rested his head on Grace's knee. She laughed, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I think she said sometimes God doesn't send miracles. He just sends small souls to remind us that miracles never really left." I nodded. "And sometimes he sends two." Raven came to me and pressed her head into my hand. I felt her warmth, the calm in her eyes, not the fear of a wounded creature, but the quiet peace of one who finally knew she was loved. I looked up. The last light of day filtered through the trees, falling across us in thin golden strands. Everything was still. No machines, no traffic, none of those broken breaths from that first night. Only peace. I whispered, "Elaine, you see this? The house finally has a heartbeat again." Raven lifted her head towards the sky, the sunset shimmering in her eyes like liquid amber. Scout curled up on the porch, breathing softly. Grace, the two of them. and I sat together in that warm, fading light, no words needed. Outside, the wind moved through the trees carrying the soft rustle of fallen leaves, and I knew, no matter how indifferent the world might be tomorrow, here in this small house, kindness would go on living. Because sometimes home isn't where you return. It's the place where someone truly sees you just once and doesn't walk away.